This is Sohail and Chetan. We're presenting on behalf of the Telecom Infra project. And in the next couple of slides, we'll just go through two topics. One is a quick introduction to the Telecom Infra project. And then Sohail will talk a little bit about one of our newest projects, which is the TIP Open Wi-Fi. Sohail, next slide, please. If you can press all of the animations here. Thank you. So for those of you not familiar, Telecom Infra Project is a non-profit foundation founded in 2016 by some of the leading companies, including Facebook, Intel, Telefonica, Deutsche Telekom, British Telecom, and Vodafone. Since the time of our founding, we've now grown to well over 500 members across various different areas of interest in the connectivity domain. As the name indicates, Telecom Infra Project is a foundation. It's a non-profit membership that looks at solving various parts of the telecom ecosystem, looking at how can we bring lower cost, better economics, better technology across the entire domain of telecom, from access to last mile technologies to core to all of the management and other activities that tie up an entire telecom network. Next slide, please. Sohail, next slide, please. Thank you. So we're looking at everything from access to transport to core. And on the access side, we've got two important technologies that we're looking at. One of them is Wi-Fi, and the other one is LTE 5G. Some of you may have heard about Open RAN, which has been in the news quite a bit in the recent times. And it's one of the latest offerings from the Telecom Infra project, where we're looking at disaggregating the RAN network in a 3GPP network. On the Wi-Fi side, we're doing something very similar. We're looking at all of the cost economics, what is holding back the growth of Wi-Fi networks. And to that extent, we've now coming up with a new way of deploying large-scale Wi-Fi, enterprise Wi-Fi architecture with Open Wi-Fi, which Sohail will go to in a few minutes. On the transport side, we have technologies like DCSG and OOPT. And all of these put together, we're looking at substantially cost reducing telecom networks so that service providers are able to source technologies from different suppliers, and also resulting in lower cost service provider networks, which we think will benefit into more sustainable business models so that consumers would ultimately be benefited in the end by better competition and lower prices. Next slide, please. In the telecom Wi-Fi group, we're looking at two important areas. We have two groups. One of them is called the Open Converged Wireless, and the other one is called the Wi-Fi Solutions Group. The Open Converged Wireless is an active development community that is actively developing open source software, defining the requirements for these open source software, coming up with the models on how to go about building open source software in a sustainable manner, in a community development manner. And that involves companies like Indio Networks that Sohail will be talking about in a minute, and lots of other companies as well, both inside India and outside of India. And in addition to both open source software development, this community is also looking at developing automation testing so that the open source software can be tested on nightly builds and monthly builds. And ultimately, we'll be looking to do product certification, which we call product logo, so that any solution purchased that uses Open Wi-Fi is certified just like the Wi-Fi Alliance, and will work with the Open Wi-Fi Cloud Stack and the Open Wi-Fi Access Point. The solutions group looks at larger picture. It looks at end-to-end scenarios, business scenarios for what kind of use cases operators need to solve when deploying Wi-Fi, looking at how to provide input for operator RFIs and RFPs, and also defines plugfests and end-to-end interoperability testing. The group is chaired by Deutsche Telekom Germany, Boingo USA, and Facebook USA at the present moment. And we're always looking for newer members to help activate the group, and to help grow the group. Next slide, please. This is a sample snapshot. We have in total over 100 companies. Many of them are active. These are just the sample of the service providers, the managed service providers, many of the hardwares that are well known, hardware companies that are well known in the Wi-Fi industry, as well as OEMs that are building specialized cloud controller only for enterprise grade Wi-Fi networks, as well as ISVs that build applications that run over the top on Wi-Fi networks. Down at the bottom, one of our most active members has been people like Qualcomm, who are now helping us build open source at 11K Wi-Fi 6 drivers, and that is that is a very revolutionary advance, helping to improve the quality of the open source driver, and in turn, we believe that it will unlock a lot of business value in the entire enterprise chain. Now, in the bottom right corner, you see a couple of different organizations. These are the other industry organizations, such as the WBA and the Cable Labs and CPQD Brazil and ITRI Taiwan. We work with a lot of these industry alliances as we come up with these programs. So for someone like the WBA, we are working with them actively on open roaming, which you may have seen in some of the recent announcements from the WBA, trying to make Wi-Fi roaming as simple and as easy as cellular roaming. Next slide, please. So from here, I'd like to hand off to my colleague, Sohail Ahmed, to introduce TIP Open Wi-Fi. And then we'll briefly take this opportunity and invite all of you to participate in the Open Wi-Fi launch that is coming up shortly on May 12th. Sohail, the floor is yours.
All right. Thanks, Chetan, and very good morning to all of you. This is Sohail here. I'm part of Indio Networks. It's one of the TIP member, and we are quite active in TIP, helping them build, test, and deploy this open Wi-Fi. During this talk, I'll touch upon the architecture of open Wi-Fi and also talk about how it is deployed. Open Wi-Fi, as Chetan mentioned, it's a project. It started with an objective of providing an open source, enterprise-ready cloud and access point software. If we really divide this entire platform into multiple layers, we can have four abstracted layers. Starting from the bottom, there is a hardware layer. One of the objectives of Open Wi-Fi project is to completely disaggregate the hardware from the software. So there are a list of recommended hardware which is supported and recommended by Open Wi-Fi. The software is fully disaggregated and it can run on any of the recommended hardware. Then comes the access point software or firmware. It is called APNOS. Is a set of it's basically a completely commercially ready firmware for any access point as recommended. Then the third layer is Cloud SDK, which is a cloud-based wireless controller for open access point. These two layers are the main major contribution of this open Wi-Fi project. And finally, on the top, there is a commercial application layer. This layer has been kept open for any SaaS vendors to bring their value-add services by integrating to the Cloud SDK on with the help of Northbound API. Now let's take a look at what are the building blocks of this open APNOS firmware. APNOS firmware has been built by integrating a lot of commercially tested, well-tested open source software. For example, OpenWRT, OpenSync, Open vSwitch, and so on. If you look at the building blocks here, on the top, there are components which has been taken from OpenSync, which deals with mainly the communication of access point with the Cloud SDK. telemetry data, and so on. And then there are blue color blocks, which are one of the contribution of this community, where they have built a lot of features which are needed by any access point. Then there are other components available for future use, for example, Open vSwitch, Linux containers, and so on. So this is how a high-level AP access point firmware architecture looks like. Now let's take a look at the Cloud SDK software. The Cloud SDK is a highly scalable software built on the cloud native Kubernetes technology. So you can say it's one of the dependency, but that's how the scale is being achieved. So Cloud SDK is it's a cloud native from day one, and it's platform agnostic. It can support thousands of access points. A lot of CI and CD tools are already integrated so that any new release can be quickly tested and deployed. Uh, let's take a quick look into the overall architecture of this Cloud SDK software. And if you look at carefully, you will find there are three major building blocks of Cloud SDK software. One is southbound interfaces. This is the block which is responsible for interacting with access points, pushing the configuration, receiving a lot of telemetry data, and so on. The second major building blocks is stream processor. All the ingress telemetry data is ingested here, processed by these various stream processors. And finally, the insights or analytics generated by these stream processors are stored in a Cassandra DB. So this is the second block. And finally, the third important block of Cloud SDK software is the northbound interface, which is responsible for providing a web application interface as well as the northbound API interface. Northbound API is a very uh, a very extensive set of APIs which can be utilized by any external system to integrate with Cloud SDK. Apart from that, access point configuration is stored in a Postgres database. There are provisioning servers which are responsible for zero touch provisioning. Access point can be automatically provisioned, and the configuration can be applied on the access point. So this is high level building blocks of a Cloud SDK. Now, how this whole solution is deployed? The Cloud SDK can be deployed on both on-premise as well as on cloud. The reason is simple. It is built on top of Kubernetes. So if you have recommended compute resource available on your bare metal server, then you can actually deploy this entire solution on-premise. The software is heavily tested on the cloud as well. It is fully supported on AWS along with the Kubernetes deployment, and it will be supported by many other cloud service providers like Azure and so on. In terms of features, there are a lot of features built in the Cloud SDK. All sort of basic and mandatory feature that is needed by any wireless controllers are available in Cloud SDK. I will not go through the list. The list is really long, but you can see uh, the SDK SDK is a fully feature rich, and same goes for access point firmware also. So it 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 is fully feature loaded, which makes it a very good alternative to any commercially ready wireless controller solution available in the market. So this is all high level introduction of open Wi-Fi. You can take over, Chetan. Hello, Chetan.
Hey, thank you. So, Hel, thanks for that. So, for all the participants here, and thanks to the organizers of Wi-Fi Knowledge, we'd like to in turn invite all of you to join us for our Open Wi-Fi launch on May 12th. And this is just what you see here is a list of the companies that will be participating in the launch. It's going to be an action-packed day talking about operator interest in democratizing and disaggregating Wi-Fi networks, as well as a new breed of cloud-scale Wi-Fi networks, including Indio networks and others from India, as well as hardware ODM manufacturers. And then the WBA will join us for how open Wi-Fi and open roaming will work together. So I look forward to all of your supporting the Open Wi-Fi launch and, of course, utilizing Open Wi-Fi and contributing to further spreading Wi-Fi throughout the industry. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chetan and Sohail. There's one question from the audience. Is Open Wi-Fi agent stack available for Qualcomm 8072 chipset?
Yes, so support for AX is also under progress right now. What Chetan had mentioned in briefly during introduction, Qualcomm is helping build this open source AX driver. So, Chetan, do you want to conclude on this?
Yeah, sure. So Qualcomm have started working on this. They are still working on the Wi-Fi 6 drivers, and we hope that the work will be completed in the next couple of months. And that is essentially the first time that we're going to be seeing fully featured open source drivers from Qualcomm for 11AX.
Thanks.
I have a question. Nadeep, is it okay?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, so where do you see, I see that this is aimed for the enterprise market, but do you see this being limited to enterprise and carrier service providers? Or is it also applicable to other segments? At least what are some long-term vision that you can share?
Yeah, sure. Very good question. So we picked the enterprise market partially because a lot of the features are more fully featured on the enterprise, and solving for the enterprise market makes sure that we can tackle other use cases. So enterprise is only the first step in the journey. As we've been developing the enterprise Wi-Fi, one of our cornerstone use cases is to deploy enterprise grade access points in apartment buildings, or what are called as MDUs, multi-dwelling units. So as part of that, we've received interest that there is a significant interest in developing and implementing open Wi-Fi at lower cost price points for the home market as well, and for the public Wi-Fi market. So we're looking at step one, enterprise for SMBs and public Wi-Fi, and step two, potentially as the community gets more interested, building for the home Wi-Fi as well. Because this is a community-driven project, ultimately we will go in the direction where community members vote, and we find significant interest in contributing to resources and working together. So if that's an area of interest, specifically the home market, we would be very interested in hearing from you.
Thank you. There's a question from Joy Kuri. Why does it make sense for competitors to participate in an open source project like Open Wi-Fi?
That is a very good question, and that is one of the questions that we had to answer in the beginning. What we're doing in Open Wi-Fi is carefully making sure that all of the things that every company would have to develop is being developed in open source, but we've left enough APIs and differentiation so that competitors can differentiate among themselves in the value-added areas. So if you look at any of the enterprise grade features that you need today to develop an access point, for example, basic configuration management, RRM management, being able to push down software upgrades, being able to handle events, alarms, all of these kind of basic meshing, 802.11s, or roaming features, every enterprise vendor would have to support these kind of features, and those are being implemented in open source. and a disaggregated open source so that you can focus only on building the access point or only on building the controller. By giving up API controls, you can implement differentiated SON algorithms or differentiated way in which you do radio resource management and still achieve differentiation. So just to come back to the main point of the question, if your competitors, there are only really two reasons for you to kind of join this project, and that is you do not have an entrenched presence. You would like to speed up your R&D, save R&D, because we'll be doing community-based automated testing. And that allows you to focus your R&D on features that are more differentiated rather than build commodity features that are table stakes for anyone to build.
Thanks. So we have a couple more questions. So Shishir's question, I think you partially answered, but maybe I'll let you answer. TIP activities happening in or for India. Any comments?
Yes, India is actually a very is an area that most TIP members feel is poised for growth. We're also seeing tremendous interest from Indian vendors and Indian ISPs. And in fact, we've also got tremendous interest from C.India as part of their PM1E project, looking at TIP as one of the architectures that could help them achieve their policy goals. So when as I said in the early stage, we are community driven. So as we get more and more input from India, we're naturally going to gravitate towards fulfilling the objectives of the Indian market very naturally. And so Make in India is very critical for our TIP vendor members. And so you will find in both at the Open Wi-Fi launch, you'll see lots of companies from India participating at the global launch. As well as after the launch, we're planning to have a special TIP Make in India project virtual event where we will further kind of unveil many of the plans TIP has, where we think we can promote better connectivity in India at more competitive pricing.
Thank you. So last question, both from Ganesan. So I'll combine the two questions. Is the recommended list of commercial APs which support Open Wi-Fi, are they available? And the follow-up question, is there any GitHub link for Open Wi-Fi software?
Sure. I'll maybe take the first part of the question and I'll hand over the second part of the question on GitHub to Sohail. So on the commercial APs, we do have some of the AP vendors shown in the presentation, such as EdgeCore, CIG, and TP-Link, have been very active members, and so their APs are currently available. If you become a TIP member and you go head over to TIP Confluence page, you will see a list of all the available SKUs for these vendors. And in order to see this on the TIP, there is no fee, so it just takes a registration and a membership to the OCW group or the Open Converged Wireless group, where you'll see this. After the launch, you will see some of this information being more publicly displayed without the need for logging in. So at least you get a first level of information on who these hardware vendors are. And by the way, we hope to unveil a couple of more vendors from India in subsequent to the launch as well. Sohail, would you like to answer the question on GitHub?
Yeah. So as Chetan mentioned, the project can be accessed on the GitHub. The entire source code related to AP-NOS and Cloud SDK is already hosted on GitHub. The only way to access it right now is to first join the TIP membership, which is free. So you need to just be part of that, log in through that interface, and you should be able to access GitHub links.
Thank you, Sohail and Chetan. I think we look forward to
Shrikant, one last question from my side
for
Chetan. Is there a role for the academic community in this project?
We believe there certainly is a role. And in fact, in the early days, we had a couple of members join us as well. If that is something of interest, I am happy to share my credentials through the organizers and then connect with you offline. We do welcome participation from academic community, especially in advancing and helping us identify any kind of more fundamental work that needs to be done.
Thanks, Chetan.
Yeah, thanks, Chetan and Sohail. I think we look forward to your event and India-specific event. We can use this Wi-Fi KS contact list to spread some news in case you wish to reach out to all the people. So I'll now, Nadeem, you can take over now. Thanks, Sohail and Chetan again.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting us to speak at this thing. We're very honored and we look forward to continued collaboration.